Labour are going to take the United Kingdom back into the European Union in all but name. Kier Starmer is going to be welcoming EU leaders to London in a couple of weeks, which is being billed as the Reset Summit. So you can read into that what you will. And in essence, what he's attempting to do at that meeting, he's attempting to strike a deal on 3 major areas. So he's attempting to strike a deal on defence, on food, and on net zero. Now, there's been talk of a defence pact for quite some time, and it's very, very difficult to know what the specific details of that type of agreement would mean. But it means some sort of an alignment, some sort of an agreement. I'm sure it means that British companies can now put in for contracts which might make a little bit of money for the Exchequer and the people of this country, but that's going to really be by the by. I think everybody knows what this type of defence agreement means. What it means is that some of the decision-making power, which previously would have been held by Parliament and the people that we vote in at Parliament, and again, we're getting back to the old Brexit arguments, aren't we? What we're essentially going to do, we're going to hand some of our decision-making over to the European Union in terms of defence. And so we won't actually be able to make independent decisions for our country's security and defence, because we'll be aligned with EU defence agreements and alignments there. And one of the things that Nigel Farage has previously said about this is, aside from the rest of the deal, he believes that this could be hugely damaging to NATO and our relationship with the United States. And on those 2 points, I think he's correct. I don't think we should be giving up any of our defence-making decisions to Europe, and I believe a huge amount of people in this country agree with me. I think we need to up the spending for our forces. You know, Kier Starmer has previously agreed to increase some of that, but I think we need to go farther and faster, to coin Kier Starmer's phrase, particularly with the military, and get it back up to a fighting force that can be respected around the world. But the EU army moves ever closer. Now, moving on to the second part of that deal with regard to food and food trade and standards. I recognise that the EU is a massive market for the United Kingdom. It's on our doorstep, and of course it's nice to trade with their friends and allies as much as you can. The problem with the European Union, and always the problem with the European Union, has been that it has these ridiculous set of food safety standards, the highest in the world, and in order to get a deal with them, they're going to expect us to align with them. Now, on the other side of the argument, of course, this is the part where people start chiming in, talking about chlorinated chicken from America, etc. I can tell you one thing, I've been to America and I've tasted the chicken, and it tastes no different. Of course, one of the things that's omitted from that argument every single time is the fact that perhaps chicken in America has been chlorinated, but so has every single bag of pre-made salad sold in every single supermarket around this country. And so to say, oh, well, you know, the Americans are doing this with their chlorine is ridiculous, because, you know, our salad is washed in chlorinated water 100% of the time. And so, you know, talking about these differing food standards is a silly game in many respects. America has got cheaper food than is on offer in Europe. And if we go with Europe, and I can understand why some people would think that that was a good idea, we are going to have to align with European food standards. And that essentially is going to annoy America, outside of the defence deal, which is going to annoy them as well. But that's going to annoy America. And I wouldn't be overly surprised if at the end of all this we get a 20% tariff just like the EU do. But it's the alignment of these food standards that is the problem. And it's always been the problem with the EU, that they can't just trade and be relaxed about that trade and, have a certain level of standard. No, it's a protectionist racket. And so because it's a protectionist racket, you have to sign up to these ridiculous standards that basically mean that you can't trade with anybody else. And the final thing that the deal's going to encompass is net zero and energy. Now, you probably already know this, but the topic of net zero is extremely complicated once you start getting into it and getting into the weeds of it, because energy is very complicated. It involves a range of trade and prices and how energy is produced and how renewables are produced and how quickly and, the proliferation of things like that. It is a massive, massive topic in itself, which couldn't even be covered in a 30-hour video, not even a 130-hour video, because it is so complicated. But as with most things in life, you can boil it down without using charts and figures and worrying about being correct about numbers. Now, a really good analogy for the current net zero thing is the invention of cars. So previous people used to use horses, but it was really around the kind of the late 19th century when cars were invented and first brought into the world and started to replace horses. And around that time, a lot of people were using horses. Now, if you would have went to those people using horses around 1870 and you'd said to those people, we've got this car coming here, so what we're going to do, we're going to start easing away from horses. The people using horses would have probably said to you, great, so do you want to just invent it and then we'll have a look at it? And that's the ridiculous position that we've somehow got ourselves into. Now, if you can look at that net zero issue where the technology isn't there and essentially what we're doing, we're exporting our carbon to other countries, we're buying things from other countries, we're shipping coal in from other countries. The ridiculous nature of all of this stuff is mind-boggling. But how about we attach ourselves to a dying economy in the EU, which is trying to align like 27 countries in a huge umbrella net zero policy. And if you think net zero is going wrong for the people of the UK, we ain't seen nothing yet. They're already having blackouts, as you may have seen last month. There was rolling blackouts went through certain parts of the European Union. And unless we change course strongly, this is going to happen. But of course, Labour think they're being clever with this net zero because once they've signed us up to this, it's out of their hands. We just follow the EU's policy on net zero. And then Ed Miliband gets to stand in front of the media and say, yes, we did promise you net zero. So what we've done is we're going with the EU and, we're going to make decisions jointly with them and everyone's going to get the right decision by putting our heads together and getting it right. And so I've washed my hands of it, basically. That's what he's going to say. And so we're going to sign ourselves up to higher levels of misery, higher levels of cost. And if you think we're paying a lot for energy now, wait till we align with standards in the EU. And so, in conclusion, Kier Starmer is going to be welcoming these leaders into London and he's going to sign us up to defence and give away our military capability and decision making to Brussels. He's also going to alienate America with food standards and make it almost impossible to strike any deal with any other country around the world, thus eliminating all of the benefits that could have happened with Brexit. And the final thing, they're going to turn the dial up to 10 on net zero, and it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. Without any shadow of a doubt, the costs are going to skyrocket, and at some point in the future, we can expect a blackout to happen. It's just a matter of time until we see sense. And at the time that there's going to be a blackout, then perhaps, we might look at it again. But for this moment right now, Kier Starmer is taking us back into Europe. And I don't care what anybody says about, oh, well, it's better for this deal, it's better for that deal. I don't care about any of that. The people of this country voted to leave the European Union. We voted for that. And we went through a huge amount of internal suffering to get to that. And eventually it was kind of half accepted by the politicians. But isn't it funny? Years later, Kier Starmer just clicks his fingers, invites a few leaders over to Europe and signs us back into the EU in all but actual name. And everyone stands around clapping and saying, oh yes, that's going to be good for our economy. And this is a really, really bad decision to go back in with the EU. It really alienates the rest of the world, alienates America, gives away more of our sovereignty and decision making to a bank of technocrats and bureaucrats in Brussels. It's not going to work out well, but it's just another thing that Labour are going to be punished at the next election for. I just hope we don't go bankrupt before we get a chance to vote in somebody else who might be to fix these issues. Anyway, thanks very much for your time.